Hi everybody. So I'm speaking today. Initially the talk was called Yoga and Justice. And it turns out that it's all about loving kindness. So we're going to start with a little practice. So I invite you to just get cozy. And as you're able and willing, just turn inward. Maybe you want to close your eyes for a moment. And in your mind, I invite you to see yourself smiling, just exuding joy. And you are so happy. Really see yourself in your mind. You're so happy because you just had a great meal, healthy and nutritious, in a home space that you love. And you know that after you finish eating, maybe you can go walk outside and feel really comfortable moving your body. Maybe after you let your food digest, you can take a little jog maybe, or walk. And you just feel really great because you know that if anything happens out on that walk, if you twist your ankle or something, that there are doctors around that you can count on. There are people around you who will take care of you, and you have access to that, and there'll be no problem. You can just go and get yourself fixed up. But right now, you just ate this delicious food in this beautiful home, and you just feel happy and free. There you are, smiling. And now one by one, you see a friend, a really great friend next to you, also smiling. Just see them in your mind. You see like a young person in your family or your community come up. Whatever little person you know, they come up and they're smiling, they're happy. Then you have some older person in your family or life come up. Just see their faces right now. When I talk about a little person, when I talk about an older person, when I talk about a friend, just see them around you. And now maybe even you see the face of a stranger, quote unquote, someone you don't really know very well, but someone you know their face. Maybe they're not even totally in view, but you just see them and they're smiling too. Everyone is beaming this beautiful light. They're just so happy and joyful. You feel it in your body, you feel it in your own face right now. Really feel that joy, see it, take a breath here. Fill yourself up and let it go. Maybe a smile comes to your face. Bring a little movement to your shoulders, blink your eyes open. And the vision that we just spent some time in is aligned with what Martin Luther King, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. would call the beloved community. And this is a concept that he enhanced and developed throughout his relationship with the recently departed Thich, Nhat, Hanh. So I'm just gonna speak today a bit about history, a bit about what this has to do with us, what it has to do with yoga and justice, and then we'll just close with an affirmation. So Thich Nhat Hanh was a Buddhist monk. May he rest in power. He was a global spiritual leader, a Zen master, a peace activist. His writings on mindfulness and peace and loving kindness, forgiveness are known all around the world. He is credited with founding engaged Buddhism. And he is also a pioneer in bringing Buddhism to the Western world. He came into interaction with Martin Luther King during what's known as the Vietnam War, where he wrote to Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a minister, an activist, a civil rights leader in the US, who was prominent at the time that the war was going on, to request that Dr. King start speaking about the conflict in Vietnam on the global stage. And in his letter that he wrote to MLK, he wrote to explain why a Buddhist monk, in Vietnam at this time would light themselves on fire. So, don't know if you know about this. I actually didn't know this history. Thich in 1963 sat down in lotus in the middle of a street and was lit on fire. He sat in lotus for 10 minutes until he eventually turned over. And I'm sorry to share that kind of graphic image with you. But it was a protest, a peaceful protest response to the government in power at the time, killing 9 Buddhist monks and or nuns during a protest because Buddhism was being suppressed in Vietnam at that time. And just to give a little background about the Vietnam War that I never knew, is that it began as an anti-colonialist movement, like so many wars, right? So the French colonial government was in place in Vietnam, and in the US we talk about it as an anti-communism war, right? But it started as these folks, and I would say brown folks in Vietnam, rebelling against the oppressive colonial government, right? That takes land, takes resources, and leaves people from those places in the dirt. So now we have monks and nuns who are committed to the peaceful lifestyle, who are wondering what they can do in a war situation and still be committed to their religious tenets, right? So they decided this peaceful show of protest, and they decided this big action of lighting on fire, which did make big headlines and achieve their goal. And what's very interesting is that Thich, although he did burn to death, may he rest in power, his heart did not burn, and it was preserved in a glass chalice. So we thank him for his sacrifice. And so now let's get back to Thich Nhat Hanh and MLK. So Thich Nhat Hanh writes to MLK and is like, hey, you know, can you bring this issue of Vietnam up? And they also spoke about freedom, they spoke about community. And this, at the time, you know, Martin Luther King is fighting for civil rights for Black folks in the USA. And these are rights to just use the public transportation systems along with everybody else, Black folks, right? To desegregate the schools, so they were segregated by race, so that public spaces could be free for all, right? And so it was very clear to these two global spiritual leaders that they were actually in the same fight, or in the same struggle. They had the same values. And so they started talking about loving kindness and nonviolence and peace and how it could really be more realized. So MLK actually took up the mantle of talking about the Vietnam War, even though his friends around him told him it's not a good idea, don't get involved. He's tutored with this around this time of saying this thing of, you know, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, you know, because he was leaning more further into this idea of oneness and we're all interconnected. And we have to work together. Unfortunately, a year after he took up this mantle, he was then assassinated, right? And the things I would say are absolutely connected. However, it opened the door. We talk about beginnings and endings all the time. Thich Nhat Hanh, in this second visit to the US, when he met with MLK, and actually told him in Vietnam he was known as a bodhisattva, an enlightened being, that chose to neglect paradise so that he can bring others to peace and kindness and love and understanding. That was the last time they met, and then a year later, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And during that political travel that Thich Nhat Hanh did, right, this kind of political, oh gosh, what is it when you go? Like this mission that he had, right? He actually got exiled, and so he stayed in the West. He wasn't able to go back into Vietnam, both North and South Vietnam, or East and West Vietnam. He was exiled in any case in the West, and that's when he started this mission of like, okay, well, mindfulness and peace is gonna live here too, and began this mission of setting up centers and doing writings and making sure that the U.S. and Europe, what have you, had these teachings of Buddhism, right? So out of that death and out of this mission that did have some tragedy, immense tragedy, there was also this new life, you know, of these teachings being brought to, you know, us over there. So what does this have to do with us now, right? Quite a few things. We know that loving kindness is placed at the center of our work, you know, as yogis. But there are actually some really tangible things, one, that we can do and ways to think about this, right? So again, the beloved community is absent of poverty, hunger, and hate. Right? This vision for the beloved community out of loving kindness has affordable housing, there's comprehensive health care, there's nutritious food for everyone, streets are safe, there are well-rounded and robust educational opportunities that are equally accessible to everyone, and there's access to jobs and meaningful work, right? So in that, there is some action, right? And some things to think about. So when we're moving in spaces in our lives, you know, including as yogis, there's just an opportunity to just explore where we can support visibility and inclusion, and extend ourselves, you know, around issues of race, gender, class, economic status, culture, again, to have these kind of basic human needs provided to everyone. And I know I'm over time, but I just want to say one more thing about the interconnectedness. You know, the Vietnam War, very close to me, I had relatives fight in that war, or relatives that went over or were supposed to, you know. And in the Black community and in the United States, heroin was introduced to our communities through the Vietnam War, and other types, and lots of PTSD, soldiers that returned who then were not the same for their families or their communities. And we can fast forward to heroin leading to crack and cocaine addiction growing in the States, leading into eventually our current opioid crisis. We weren't dealing with opioids so heavily, you know, until the Vietnam War. This anti-communism movement, you know, from the States was really in action. So it is very much history alive, you know, right now. And we really see how the injustices of our past have haunted us to this day. And in the work that we do, we stand to free ourselves and free those around us from it. And there is always something that we can do to contribute to justice in the spaces that we move in. So give thanks. Thank you, everyone. And if we could do a quick call and response, is that okay? 1 second. So a hand on heart, and just repeating aloud, may I be happy.
May I be happy.
May I be well.
May I be well.
May I be peaceful.
May I be peaceful.
May I be free.
May I be free.
May all beings on the planet Earth
May all beings on the planet Earth
and beyond be happy.
Be happy.
May they be well.
May they be well.
May they be peaceful.
May they be peaceful.
May they be free.